We're going to spend a few minutes today talking about crime and deviance from a sociological perspective. Now, criminologists are specialized sociologists, so criminology as a study falls under the broader discipline of sociology. But we want to talk specifically today about some of the criminological theories that are contained in the field of sociology. So we're going to talk today specifically about some of the theories that are contained in this broad area of criminology and the study of crime and deviance in society. And there are some questions that you should probably be thinking about as you're understanding these theories. When does conformity verge on deviance? How does a society manage to control its members and then convince them to conform to its rules, its laws, its standards, its norms? And then finally, what are the consequences of deviant behavior? So first, let's start off with a couple of little definitions here. The first of those is social control. These are techniques and strategies which prevent deviant behaviors in a society. And so these are the things that force you, so to speak, to obey others and to do what others want you to do. And we have a lot of agents of socialization that help to work in tandem to keep those social controls in place. We obey our parents, we obey our teachers, we listen to our peers, sometimes to our own demise. We do what our bosses tell us in the workplace. We conform to governmental rules and regulations. All of these things are techniques that society, the structure of society, uses to help prevent deviance from occurring. And crime, right? Deviance and crime are intimately linked to each other. And we also then should briefly define conformity, obedience, and social control. Conformity is going along with those who have really no special right to direct our behavior. And this usually does happen with our peer groups. These are people that tell us what to do and how to do it, and we follow along with them because we want to be part of that group. So we conform to the norms or the standards of the group. Obedience goes a step farther than that. This is where we comply with authorities, we comply with rules and regulations. Obedience can happen in the workplace. It can happen when you're the child in a family, or it can happen when you're sometimes the wife or husband in a family because one of those members in that intimate relationship has more power and control over the other. This can happen also with our government. Our government forces us to be obedient members of society by complying with rules, regulations, by writing us traffic tickets when we get pulled over, by telling us what we can and cannot do in social settings. Now, social controls can be informal or formal. Right? Informal social controls are used very casually to enforce norms. An example of this might be a parent that's out to dinner with their children and the children start to misbehave a little bit, and the parent gives the child that parent look, the raised eyebrow, the stern look at the child as if to tell the child, you better stop that right now. That's an informal social control. Formal social controls are carried out by authorized agents. As I mentioned before, this is the cop that writes you the traffic ticket because you were speeding. This is the boss that calls you into the office and tells you that certain behaviors are inappropriate for the workplace. And it really is important for us to note that the interplay between informal and formal social control is very important to understand. Sometimes informal and formal social control lines up together so that you have the informal, for example, what's happening in your family or with your peers, enforcing the formal. So let's say we have a law against marijuana smoking in society, and your peer group also says this is bad, you should not be doing it. This is an example of the interplay lining up to enforce each other. But let's assume that we have that law that says you may not smoke marijuana, but you have a group of peers who say it's all right to do this. This is an example of when the interplay may not line up, and it may force you as an individual to make a decision that goes against either the informal or formal social controls. And of course, there is a theory that we can use to describe social control. Of course, control theory. Our connection to others in society leads us to conform to the norms of our society. And so this theory, when we're talking about specifically law and society, focuses on why some people conform and others choose not to. And it also says that if left to our own devices, all of us would deviate, and that's why we have to have laws. And I think if you take a minute to consider whether or not you would deviate from some of the laws that we have in our society, you probably will find that you will. Do you ever go above the speed limit while you're driving? Well, if that's the case, then you're deviating from a formal law that we have in our society. Now, your peers may say, hey, it's okay, but we still have that formal law in place. So this theory, control theory, wants to know, why are you willing to bend or break the rules and other people may not be? And so this theory says that what causes that behavior is the absence of control. So then you say to yourself, well, look, we do have a control. There is a speed limit. It is posting, but I'm still breaking it. Well, I think hand in hand with that, you have to consider, do you get caught? And so there's a stake there. Your behavior is attached to whether or not you have something to lose. So you're driving down the road, you're doing 5 or 10 miles an hour above the speed limit, and you have to make a decision. Am I going to get caught or am I not going to get caught? And if you feel like you're going to get caught, you're likely to keep your speed close to the speed limit. However, if you feel like you're not going to get caught, maybe you've done this many times and not gotten caught, you're more likely to engage in that deviant behavior. So the focus here is our attachment to or our involvement with the belief of a normal society, and that's control theory. And control theory is kind of one of those overarching theories that is used in the field of criminology. We also need to define deviance and crime, the differences and similarities in these two terms. Deviance is generally behavior that violates standards or expectations. It often involves violating group norms, and it's important to note that it is subject to context and time. And one of the easiest examples I can give you is body piercing. 20 or 30 years ago, it was considered deviant to have any kind of piercing other than that which might be in your ears. Today, it's normal. It's no longer considered deviant behavior. Tattoos are also something that you can think of in terms of deviance or not. 100 years ago, a tattoo might have been considered a horrible thing to do to your body. However, today, it's an accepted form of self-expression, and rarely do people consider it to be deviant when a person gets a tattoo. Crime, however, is a violation of law, and formal penalties will apply if you break the law. So deviance may be criminal, but crime is always deviant. So now that we've got the definitions out of the way, let's move on to some criminological theories that we use in the field of sociology.